Zack Snyder created this camera rig to hold 3 separate film cameras to capture the exact same take all at once. What if we just like film on 3 different iPhones? Because I want to have my own friggin' Snyder Cam sequence. Action.
This is Sparta!
So the movie 300 came out when I was a senior in high school, and this movie was like a teenage boy's dream movie. It had all the coolest stuff. It had cool action, it had abs, it had slow-mo, abs. I'm not obsessed with abs, but there were so many. There were at least 1,800 abs in that movie. As a skinny teenage boy, I was jealous, but also just totally inspired by the incredible action of that movie. There was this one scene in particular that was incredible and so iconic, it has stuck with me ever since. It's the shot where the camera is like flying sideways, tracking the action, as we're seeing the Spartans just lay waste to all the Persians, and you see King Leonidas right there in the center, all buff with his shield and sword and spear, just like going to town. But the iconic part of this moment was the speed ramping and the crash zooms. And this was achieved with a very unique camera rig. Zack Snyder and his cinematographer Larry Fong created this camera rig to hold 3 separate film cameras with 3 separate lenses, each at a different focal length. One with kind of a wide angle lens, one with a medium zoom lens, and then one with a pretty dang telephoto lens there. And so that way they were able to actually capture this same take all at the same time with different cameras. And that was why the action in that scene from 300 was so incredible. Actually using 3 separate cameras to capture the exact same take so that you can actually go in and out between all the different focal lengths, so you can really punch in on what's interesting or go wide to see the whole scene, all in slow-mo if you want it, or real time if you want it. You can make those choices later, and that gives you the flexibility to make sure that the final sequence is as cool as possible. It was a really novel idea at the time. But now, almost 16 years after 300 was released, we have camera tech that allows us to replicate this effect without 3 massive film cameras and a giant crew. More specifically, iPhone 13 Pros that have 3 separate cameras and 3 separate lenses at 3 separate focal lengths, a lot like how they shot that scene in 300. So I was thinking, what if we just like film on each of these cameras? Because I want to have my own friggin' Snyder Cam sequence. I want to have my own punch zooms and timer mapping. The way I see it, there are 2 paths forward using the latest iPhones to recreate this effect. One path is to literally take 3 different iPhones, each rolling slow-mo on 1 separate lens, and combine those together after the fact. The problem there is that we actually would need to then design a rig to hold those phones in a very specific position to get those lenses as close together as possible. The easier solution is to literally just film all 3 videos on 1 phone, and there is an app that lets me do that. It's called Multicam Pro. And this will actually allow me to record all 3 camera angles at the same time. The problem is that it is limited to 1080p 30 frames per second, which means that there's no slow-mo capabilities, and for this effect to work, I really need that slow motion. But at least this will allow me to test the stacking portion of this effect. So while I test that, I have tasked Natalie with coming up with an actual 3D design that we can print to hold those phones together, so that we can actually do the slow-mo portion of this effect. So we're actually walking down both paths at the same time.
So Wren tasked me with building this Zack Snyder rig so we can shoot those oily boys. The difficulty in making this rig is that the lenses have to be stacked at least vertically as close to each other as possible. They can't have any horizontal shift, because then you're introducing something called parallax, where if a camera is just slightly off center from another camera, then they're not going to align by matters of feet for like every millimeter. I've actually done a simple test of just stacking 3 iPhones on top of each other and seeing if that works, and it does work, but this is a little bit more elegant of a solution. So the design philosophy is just to hold the phones in the most economical manner possible while not obstructing the lenses. This is all made simple by basically mocking it up in 3D before we ever start building it, and then I can just go in with a dimensionally accurate iPhone model and build around it. And so I just made a little side-to-side clamp that kind of just holds it in with pressure. This is a solid V1, so I'm actually busy making props for our season 2 of Son of a Dungeon. So I'm going to pass off this design to Wren, who's going to improve it considerably.
So here's the results of that experiment, shooting Nico out in the studio. And layering those shots together, it's very evident which layer is which. There's a little bit of jiggle between each of these cameras. The reason being is that our iPhones actually have little optical stabilizers inside the lenses themselves. So they're physically moving to counteract the motion of your hand. And that's doing it independently between each of these cameras. What that means is that there's now extra motion introduced into each of these shots. It's very subtle, but you can totally see it, especially between the wide-angle lens and the main lens here. So of course, the whole purpose behind all of this is to be able to get those crash zooms in and pulling out to the wide, going to a medium. And that's what we're doing here. Inside each of these little smash zooms, I'm actually keyframing the opacity of each shot a little bit. That's able to hide the transition a little bit. So when we're viewing the wide video here, we're only looking at the wide. We're not looking at a composite of all three. But when we zoom in, we're now looking at the zoomed in shot. And same thing when we go to the medium shot here, and I'm hiding that transition with the motion blur. So this is a cool proof of concept, and it totally works. But of course, this entire thing is mostly just an exercise because we can't use it because it doesn't shoot slow-mo. The iPhone can actually shoot 240 frames per second at 1080p, but it can't do that with all three cameras at the same time. Which brings us back to designing a rig that holds 3 phones.
Huge thanks to today's sponsor, ExpressVPN, for sponsoring this episode. And just like Wren is juggling 3 iPhones right now, I am juggling 3 baseballs to give you guys a sense of what he's going through, probably emotionally. If there's one thing that you're gonna need in a 21st century internet world, it's gonna be a VPN. And why is that? Well, when you send your data out on the open internet, it is vulnerable to hackers and to be stolen and sold to third-party advertisers. You see, a VPN gives you the ability to further encrypt your data as it's out on the open internet floating around. That means it's less vulnerable to being taken, stolen, sold to third parties. And I gotta do this all in one take, man. First take, first try. The best part about using a VPN is that why is this so tiring? First take, first try. ExpressVPN has servers in over 94 countries. They're available on every device, and from any of those devices, you can tell websites that you are accessing the internet from an entirely different location. So this feature allows you to access content that might not otherwise be available in your country or region. Now, what do I like to get into? Well, did you know that the entire Studio Ghibli library is available in other countries on Netflix? They don't tell you that in American Netflix, but it actually is true. It's available. So if you just tell ExpressVPN that you're accessing the internet from a different country or region, you can actually get access to the entirety of Studio Ghibli, and that's pretty cool. And hey, listen, if you don't believe me, shoot. First take, first try. ExpressVPN was rated #1 VPN service by Forbes and TechRadar. So if you guys are interested in getting started today, head on over to, did I burp? I'm gonna leave the burp in there. Head on over to expressvpn.com/corridorcrew and get started. And now, Nick!
All right, take 133.
Sign up right now using the link in the description below, and you can get 3 months free. That's expressvpn.com/corridorcrew. All right, once again, huge thanks to them for sponsoring, and now let's see what happens with this rig. Good? Yeah. Okay, just edit out all the parts where I drop it, and we should be good to go. Cool?
Yeah.
All right, cool, man. Whew. Ooh.
Okay, this is the design that Natalie came up with here, and it's very straightforward. It essentially lines up the lenses of each camera vertically, and it has a very solid form factor here. But there's a problem with the design, and that's it's not easy to get the phones in and out, and that's kind of an important piece here, because if we're gonna be using someone's phone, they need to have the ability to get that phone back like in half a second. Another problem that I'm seeing is that, like, let's say we get them all in there, how are we gonna roll the camera? Because it's like on my phone here, I can just, hit that button and great. But how am I to do that on the other cameras? The camera button itself is blocked. Yeah, okay, so that is an issue. This is why we iterate on designs. So that way we can learn from how a design is working, make those adjustments, and do it again. Since Natalie is now working on a different project, I went ahead and I actually just designed, honestly, a completely new design for this. So the red is the zoom lens, the green is the main 1x lens, and the blue is the wide lens. And I put the blue up front because it's gonna see a whole lot. It should be the furthest thing out. The zoom lens I put in the back here behind everything because its field of view is really narrow. I can have the other phones pretty much sitting right on top of it and they won't show up in the shot. My hope is that since these two lenses are kind of like more narrow, they're vertically aligned, and so we won't see any of that left and right parallax, whereas the wide camera, because it's so wide, you're not gonna notice the parallax as much going off to the left and right. And I'm utilizing the MagSafe technology built into the newer iPhones.
Yeah, bitch! Magnets! Oh!
And it's like, it's got some heft to it. It's not the strongest thing, but like, it'll stick. I decided to go ahead and I bought these little magnetic rings that specifically work with the MagSafe. It lines up perfectly with the phone because it's got these little two things down here to orient the phone. Just like that. And so this way I know that the phone will be in the exact orientation and position I need it to be in, but I can also just whoosh, take it out when I need it. As a safety precaution, I might end up throwing a rubber band on each of these. So a rubber band, not exactly an elegant solution, but it works. So what is elegance anyway? I don't know. I'm fairly pleased with this design. I like the aesthetics of it. I think it's kind of cool looking. So the next step is to finish this and print that out. I'm gonna do that tonight. It worked. Check this out. I'm actually very happy about this. It is always like so incredibly satisfying when you 3D print something that you actually modeled and it works. So the next step in this is to test whether or not my magnets even fit. And they're too big. Dang it. I've made the little inset here too small. Fortunately, this is really easy to fix. Unfortunately, that means a whole nother day because this is a 12-hour print. But despite that, I'm like really pleased. This should work. Next thing you'll see is tomorrow when this is hopefully done. Again, it worked. I think. I don't exactly know yet. I made the changes, I reprinted it, and it worked. With the exception of the fact that the printer's essentially dead right now. We can repair it. I had this issue where the print became dislodged from the bed as it was still printing pretty early on, and that got stuck to the printer head, which didn't know that it had failed. So it kept continuing to extrude plastic, but it was stuck on the thing, and it just kind of kept turning into this big blob that expanded outwards and started engulfing the entire printer extruder and ripped out the temperature sensors. So now I can't even turn it back on to heat it up to take the plastic off. That put me in an awkward situation where, you know, we have other stuff needing these printers and we're down a printer and this is a 13-hour print. This has to work. If this fails again and kills our second printer, we're out. And then we kind of have to scrap this whole video. This is the moment of truth. So I'm gonna take this MagSafe sticker, I'm gonna apply it to the print, and I'm gonna see if my phone will stick to it. Okay. Strength test. Okay, actually gonna try to get it to come off. Okay. Oh, dude, look at that. Nothing in frame. Nothing in frame. Hey, Carmichael, you're pretty. So the plan now is to borrow a couple phones and see if we can actually put this whole thing together.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
We good, and I have AppleCare, so, you know. I'm gonna go show Natalie. Nat.
What'd you do? Uh-oh. Are you still wanting to use my iPhone 13?
She's nervous.
Hey, you have every right to be nervous. Do you have AppleCare?
Nope. So,
Ooh.
don't
Okay,
destroy it.
that does increase the stakes a little bit.
Okay, bye, phone.
Hey, Jordan.
So I also don't have any protection whatsoever. The fate of this phone is in Wren's hands right now. I just bought this thing, and so I'm trusting this plastic duck holder.
There's a lot of pressure on my shoulder, wrist, fingers right now. Chances are your cell phone was one of the most expensive items you own, and I'm now holding other people's souls. I am being so careful right now, so delicate. The magnets are a great idea, but it is incredibly precarious. I somehow feel like I'm holding more money than a Red camera. I know I'm not, but it feels like I am. But that was just filming at 4K 60. The plan here is to shoot 240 FPS slow-mo. This is a Snyder camera after all. So I think now we should test it with the piñata in slow-mo. So we came up with the idea to fill piñatas with Nerf darts or random debris that looks cool in slow motion flying outwards. So the test is whether or not this sword, this is actually my personal sword from high school, can actually cut through the piñata. This is a dry run for whether or not this is a feasible thing, because maybe it works well but doesn't look good.
I'm not so worried about chopping through. I'm just worried about what I might do once the blade's back in my hands again.
These are bongo ties because they look like bongo drums. But it's rubber, so it should grip. Boom, there we go, that'll work.
Whoa! I mean, it saved it.
I'm not gonna do that with it anyway, so this is just like an airbag. It's just to save you in the event of an accident. All right, I think we're good to go. How are you feeling about this, Nico?
I'm ready.
And 3, 2, 1, action.
You know, it's not bad. Didn't make it all the way through. I thought this would happen.
Nico, just flip it around and slice it one more time. Okay, ready? Mm-hmm. And 3, 2, 1, action.
Just took 2 tries. One would have been nice.
Oh man.
Whoa, you chopped the dart!
Look at this. I'm proud of this.
Please.
I mean, as a proof of concept, it totally works. I think we have most of the ingredients we need, except now we actually need a subject. You know, Nico's cool and all, but we need someone who knows how to use a sword and look cool doing so. And I only know one person. It's D, of course. D's got a whole YouTube channel where he does a bunch of stuff with swords. It made complete sense for him to bring a sharp sword.
It's actually my first custom sword I had built, so I designed everything. It is a folded 1095 high carbon steel blade.
Oh my goodness.
What's really cool about the sword is that I have 3 custom fullers cut into it, which reduce the weight. And if you look at the back of the top half of the blade, they basically cut it into a diamond shape, so that has less resistance when you cut through things, and it also reduces the weight on the top of the blade. So the balance is like a lot nicer. So it's a really fast sword.
This thing could take off a head.
Oh yeah.
I want to see the sword in action now.
So we had D come in, we had to get a whole bunch more piñatas. We filled them with all sorts of like dust and paint and things and eggs. I really want to do one where it's just 4 of them in a row and you're just trying to get from point A to point B and I'm just gonna follow you sideways. So the purpose of this shot is to actually replicate the original shot from 300. So D, for this, obviously I'm gonna need you to do the coolest slices possible, but also keep in mind you gotta look cool between the slices.
Okay.
I know that'll be easy for you, I'm not worried.
Okay, I got it.
Dionitis!
Dionitis, dude. I went my whole life for this.
I'm so excited, man. This is like actually working. What started off as just like this random idea that I was like, wait, I think we could do it. And here we are in the middle of the street making it happen. That's what filmmaking's about. Okay, everything is rolling. Okay, are you guys ready? And 3, 2, 1, action.
hold on. I gotta get a picture of that pose.
Cool, all right, cut. Oh my God!
Yeah.
That was a surprise to everyone, I think.
I was not expecting that. I was like, I just have to cut through the smoke. Just one last cut.
Wow, that was nuts. You know what? Let's break a few more pinatas. Let's get some more shots. 3, 2, 1, action. I broke the mace. That's broken. I'm done. We got it.
I think we're good. That was awesome.
All right, cut. Heck yeah, that was awesome. Where can we find you, D?
Well, if you like sword stuff, I have a sword channel, Cerberus Arms, and I also do Still the No channel. Sometimes Nico's in videos, sometimes other people are in videos. The last video we did was we shot a katana with a bunch of guns to see if it split the bullets. So if you want to see a katana get shot to pieces by guns, head on over to that channel. Check it out.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, dude. It was really fun.
Thanks a lot. You killed it.
Thanks, man.
Like literally, you killed them. It worked. It totally worked, and I'm so excited. I'm so proud that this thing actually worked. But you may have noticed a little bit of jankiness in these shots. You know, they are not perfect. So how can we actually make this better? Because I think one of the most important aspects of any sort of creative endeavor, it's the idea of reflection. You have to reflect upon what worked and how you can make it better, because that's how you get better. So what did I learn from this project? Well, a few things. One, I think the magnets were a great idea, but it can be improved upon. Secure them down a little bit better. Maybe have some sort of latch that actually holds the phone as like a bit of a safety thing. Secondly, while having the flexibility to zoom in and out whenever I want is incredible, the problem is that I'm still locked into that framing, whatever it is. And I tried actually reframing some of the shots in post, which does work to a degree, but you lose quality anytime you have the wider images coming in because they're super zoomed in. So instead of having everything be aligned right in the center of frame, I can have stuff be aligned slightly higher. Alter the design, maybe like rotate this one upwards like 2 or 3 degrees, so that way the overall composition is better. The last thing is the misalignment in the images caused by the optical image stabilization. So I actually ended up having to go through and add hundreds of keyframes, moving the position of each layer so that when we did reframe, it matched up. That required a lot of manual work. The problem is that there's no way to turn that off unless you physically hack your phone to do so. The image stabilization uses magnets to like move the actual sensor. So if you take a magnet and literally put it on the other side of your phone, you will lock the sensor into place, preventing it from moving. If I did that for each of the phones, we wouldn't have had that sort of wobbly image look, and I could have set the framing to be rock solid for the entire shot. That would have reduced so much work. Those are things I learned by doing. You know, that's part of the design process, and that's why I think reflection is so important to any sort of thing that you make. And honestly, those are just like the first 3 things I can think of. There's probably a million different ideas that could improve this rig. If you have any of those, leave a comment down below. I'll be reading through them. And of course, I'm gonna be doing more of these kind of builds in the future, so make sure you subscribe to see those. We've got Nerf Drone 2.0 coming at some point soon.
Did you do a triple smush?
Huh?
Triple smush?
Pano?
Triple smush pano?
Can I? Can you choose lenses for pano? You can.
Triple smush!
You ready? And go.
Oh, hey, it actually all worked.
Totally did work! That is so bizarre!